We're back on the Early Edge. I'm joined by Danny Brasco to break down the Minnesota Vikings. Danny, I said it before the break. I think this team, I didn't say it very artfully, but I think this team has like a range of outcomes that is quite good. I mean, I honestly think this team, we saw it last year. They were a surprise. I think they can do it again behind J.J. McCarthy, who I'm not even that big on, by the way. But because Kevin O'Connell is their coach, I'm thinking like this Minnesota Vikings team can do something. So let's start there at the quarterback position. Listen, I'm no huge fan of J.J. McCarthy. I think he's going to be okay for the Minnesota Vikings, but I just love his coach and coordinator. Sam Darnold's gone, J.J. McCarthy in. How do you see this QB position shaping up for the Minnesota Vikings?
I actually expect him to struggle a bit. And Sia, I'm with you. I'm not that big on him either. What I'm big on is Kevin O'Connell. You alluded to it, the quarterback whisperer. He milked every ounce of talent out of Sam Darnold and really had that offense humming. The Vikings were surprisingly good last season. Their record, nobody expected them to be that successful with Darnold at the helm. But we saw them start to deteriorate at the end. And just like so much play is relying on the offensive line, the loss of Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle, really impacted Darnold. So my question for McCarthy, just as much as his talent in the first season and how he's going to fare in his rookie campaign, is what kind of protection will he have? Will Darrisaw's injuries come back up? They loaded up on that offensive line. They've got Ryan Kelly too. So if they can protect the young kid, maybe he can succeed. Maybe O'Connell can just draw it up perfect for him. But I'm not that high on him. I think he's a little small. I think the NFL might hit him kind of fast. And I do think that he'll struggle a bit in his rookie campaign.
So Danny, he's why I say the range of outcomes is a 4 to 5 win team or a 12 to 13 win team. And that's me like not really having a take, right? But I think if JJ McCarthy is the guy that some people that I respect really like JJ McCarthy, if he's that guy, then at least like 75% of maybe 80% of what Sam Darnold was last year, this team, which you mentioned the offensive line upgrade, and also on defense in free agency and in the draft, they really upgraded an already like solid defense, their back end. I think that's a really big problem for Minnesota. It leads me to my next question, which is Minnesota, their win total is 8.5. Now the over is minus 145. So the market likes them to get to 9 wins. The under is plus 120. We see the win totals for each of these teams though. Obviously they're kind of third tier with the Bears behind the Packers and the Lions. Danny, how are we feeling about this over 8.5 wins?
The market really giving them a respect with that minus 145 towards the over. I'm going to lean towards the plus 120 on the under. Like I said, I don't want to be just a JJ hater, but I'm not that high on him. I need him to prove it to me first. The kid's a winner, though. You saw his record, 27-1, incredible winning percentage. So maybe he comes out and surprises me. Early on, if you look at their schedule, they may have initial success and say, hey, look at JJ. Here he comes. Bears, Falcons, Bengals, Steelers, Browns, and then an early bye week to regroup. Maybe they start a little hot. But then the season kind of hits them like a ton of bricks. See ya. Eagles, Chargers, Lions, Ravens, Bears, Packers, Seahawks, Commanders, Cowboys. Where's the break? It's finally at the Giants towards the tail end of the season. But oh yeah, they end in the North with the Lions and the Packers once more. So brutal ending to the season. It doesn't get easier after their bye week in 6. And I just can't find that 9th win. As hard as I look, how I rate JJ today, how I rate their offensive line holding up, Will Darrisaw, like I said, rear those ugly injury questions again. I worry a little bit about his first season. I think they'll succeed with O'Connell. He'll find great talent out of him, but it won't be the talent of last year.
Where's the break? The break was with Dallas. You clearly said Dallas. That's obviously the break. Says a Commanders fan. Everybody relax. Yes. I'm just kind of joking. Okay, well, if we're talking about the win total, we also, I think it's fair to have Minnesota, and people I think people are going to think I'm crazy. I think it's fair to talk about Minnesota from an NFC North standpoint in terms of winning the division. In terms of the number itself at plus 400, there's an argument that Detroit, speaking of injuries, they're getting healthy on that defensive side of the ball going into the year, but they lost both coordinators. The Packers, I feel like, can be a little hit or miss. Plus 400 to win the NFC North. Danny, are we considering that? And if not, who do you kind of like to win this NFC North?
I think the number will be very attractive considering what they did with Darnold last season. But like I said, O'Connell got everything out of Darnold. And let's not sleep on Sam Darnold. He had a long career of struggle with the New York Jets and in other places that weren't just ideal scenarios for him. But eventually, he really gained a lot of great experience as a backup quarterback, a lot of different systems and coaches. And he gave his best season, right? So that was a long time coming for Sam Darnold to get that season out of him. I don't think that just happens with McCarthy overnight, right? Maybe people like the prototypical kind of new model quarterback he is with that mobility. But plus 400, I think, is attractive. I don't think it's enough for these things to get by the Lions and the Packers, who are so well coached and just perennial contenders. They're knocking at the door. Feels like Dan Campbell and those boys are there every season. It feels like they're the team of destiny now lately, right? The last couple of years. And I don't see them being unseated in this division quite yet by the Minnesota Vikings in their first year with a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, the first year with the rookie part. And by the way, I know you're not a big JJ guy, neither am I necessarily. Again, it's a KOC issue with me in terms of him potentially being okay. But you mentioned the Michigan winning record, the winning record at Michigan. Yeah. It's like a lot of those games, he didn't really have to do anything. So it's really hard to, you mentioned 27-1. It's really hard to kind of like lean on that, given some of those games were just, handing the ball off. But, obviously they drafted him where they drafted him for a reason. So let's see how that plays out. I think I know the answer to this next question, Brasco, and it's, does Minnesota make the playoffs? Now, to make the playoffs is even money. To miss the playoffs is minus 120. Where do you stand here?
I'm going to lean to miss the playoffs, but O'Connell and that coaching staff can get any team into the playoffs. They might make me look silly and really have JJ McCarthy firing on all cylinders early. I just think that, again, these last wild card spots, they probably belong to my Los Angeles Rams, who I'm just a fanboy of. They're my second favorite team after the New York Giants, after they cashed me a huge future bet to eke into the playoffs there. I think one of these more experienced teams is going to be able to unseat them here. So I expect growing pains for the Vikings this season. See, I think they'll show us some promise, but ultimately maybe be a 6-7 win team.
I hope I'm hosting when we cover the Rams, Danny, because I think they're really good. I don't even want to say they're sneaky. Like, you can't really say this team is sneaky anymore. I think the Rams have a legitimate, like, obviously I put the Eagles first, but I think the Rams have a legitimate Super Bowl shot to represent the NFC. I'm just throwing that out there. Justin Jefferson. Yeah, I'm throwing it out there. Justin Jefferson receiving yards total is 1,200.5. Will he have another big year? Do we like the over or the under here? Again, different quarterback. What do we think?
Yeah, first of all, shame on me for not having brought up Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison throughout this entire segment talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Their wide receiver core's talent is top tier. So if McCarthy is solid, he's got the best weapons to work with, right? Maybe even just screen passes can rack up the yards for him. But look, man, Jay Jetta, with any decent quarterback, with me or you back there, has a chance to be the offensive player of the year. So plus 1,600, I think it's worth a sprinkle with anyone back there, right? Like I said, if he makes us doubters, if he's just shining on them and hitting these short routes and breaking them off for 75-yard breakaway runs, then yeah, his stats will look tremendous regardless of how JJ's playing. If he can hit the downfield throws, if he's a rookie that's struggling to find the middle of the field, things like that, right? I think Jay Jetta's still live for this award. So plus 16, no, I got to take a shot at that. Doesn't matter.
All right, so we do. Okay, so let me ask you a two-part question here. We like him at plus 1,600 potentially to win the offensive player of the year, but do we also like the over 1,200.5 receiving yards?
I think I would sooner take the long shot of the offensive player of the year than I would the over 1,200 yards. I think obviously those things might have to happen in tandem, but I like the big plus money odds and that kind of outlier, right? Maybe they don't succeed as much as we necessarily think, but that he's just such a standout player that he supersedes the players on the teams that are actually making the playoffs and really on the headline. So maybe there's just an outlier blip season where JJ goes off, Vikings don't necessarily succeed as much as they hoped, and he can win a plus 1,600 bet.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think the plus 1,600 is pretty great value. All right, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire for one last question. Since we are talking about this particular Minnesota Vikings team, you said they wouldn't win the division at plus 400. Obviously, the Packers and the Lions are 1 and 2 there. Who wins the NFC North this year?
Oh, you're catching me off guard. I was not prepared to make the call on this, Sia, but I think it's got to be the Lions again. They're going to keep biting everyone's kneecaps until they make their way to that Super Bowl. And Riverboat Dan, 4th and goal calls, 4th down, fake punts. I mean, it works. It doesn't work. He's a genius until he's a fool. Eventually, he's going to push the right number of buttons in the right sequence to get them to that promised land. So I'll go with the Detroit Lions as of today once more. But maybe come back to me as the season nears and see what my pick is again. You have to check back in because, man, the season approaches and I couldn't be more excited. See ya.